Chapter 171. Xiaoyan's face was somewhat excited, his gaze fixed intently on the white jade box in front of him. His hand tremblingly reached out, wanting to take hold of the small jade bottle. Looking at Xiaoyan's movement, a hint of mockery flashed across Gu Ti's dull eyes. Just as Xiaoyan's hand touched the small jade bottle, his heart instantly tightened fiercely. He only felt an icy coldness penetrate his bones at the point of contact. In an instant, a thin layer of ice covered his hand, and it showed a tendency to spread rapidly outwards. The sudden change caused Xiaoyan's expression to slightly shift. He moved slightly. Surges of purple doqi quickly coursed through the meridians to his arm inside his body. Instantly, a faint purple flame rose from Xiaoyan's elbow, clashing with the bone-chilling cold air. In just a moment, it dissolved the cold air. Shaking the water off his arm, Xiaoyan wrapped his hand in the purple flame, and grabbed the jade bottle. This time, his expression did not change as he picked it up. On the side, seeing the purple flame on Xiaoyan's hand, Gu Ti's face showed a hint of surprise, and he exclaimed, "Heavenly flame. No, that's not right." Once again feeling the power of the purple flame, Gu Ti slightly shook his head. Looking at the young man in front of him, he quietly said in his heart, "Well done. I didn't misjudge him after all. This little fellow is not simple." Ignoring Gu Ti's gaze, Xiaoyan meticulously assessed the small jade bottle in his hand that continuously emitted an icy cold air. He carefully opened the bottle lid, revealing a milky white liquid copying about half of the bottle inside. A trace of frozen ice could be vaguely seen on the surface. He gently inhaled a breath of the cold air from within, and his body instantly shuddered violently. The purple flame doqi in his body circulated rapidly, and in just a moment, it expelled all the icy cold essence outside. Xiaoyan reached up to brush his hair, and surprisingly found that a thin layer of ice had actually covered it. He immediately smacked his lips in shock. This ice spirit cold spring truly lived up to its reputation as a rare treasure. No wonder this item was needed as an aid when consuming the heavenly flame. And because of this, Xiaoyan finally understood just how terrifying the power of the heavenly flame truly was, to the extent that it required several types of rare objects to cooperate to increase the chance of success. Carefully examining the ice spirit cold spring for a moment, and waiting for Yao Lao to confirm it, Xiaoyan quickly put it into the white jade box. "You've taken the item. If you have nothing else, hurry up and go." Looking painfully at the ice spirit cold spring being put into Xiaoyan's storage ring, Gu Ti's face scrunched up, and he directly waved his hand to dismiss him. You are reading the story at https://truyenful.vn. Having obtained what he needed, Xiaoyan breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. He cupped his hands to Gu Ti and said with a smile, "Thank you, Grandmaster, for fulfilling my request. If there is an opportunity in the future, I will definitely return to seek a transaction with you. Wait until you find other treasures. Otherwise I, the old man, don't want to see you." Gu Ti pouted and said impolitely, "Of course. If there isn't anything extraordinary, this little fellow would dare to bother your excellency." Nodding with a smiling face, Xiaoyan looked around the room, and casually asked, "Grandmaster Gu Ti, do you have a Tier 3 magical core? If you do, then..." "Tier 3 magical core?" Gu Ti rolled his eyes dismissively and said, "Do you think I would collect that kind of low-tier item?" Looking at Gu Ti's disdainful expression, Xiaoyan was speechless. "You little fellow want a magical core, right? I don't have a Tier 3 magical core, but I actually have a Tier 5 magical core. How about it? Want it? Heh, just bring me another bottle. Oh no, even half a bottle will do, and I'll trade it to you." Rubbing his hands, Gu Ti quickly retracted his disdainful expression, and said with a smile, looking exactly like a cunning old fox, "Ah, Grandmaster Gu Ti likes to joke. 1 bottle of purple crystal source is already my entire fortune. Where would I get more? Laughing dryly and shaking his head, Xiaoyan was not a fool. A tier 5 magical core was also precious, but as long as one had the strength, it could be obtained. However, the purple crystal source required not only strength, but also great luck. It wasn't something Yon could obtain just by wanting it. Furthermore, a tier 5 magical core was not yet needed by Xiaoyan. Since Grandmaster Gute doesn't have a tier 3 magical core here, this little fellow will have to go to the auction house to try his luck then. Smiling at Gute, Xiaoyan then slowly turned around. ND walked out of the room door, under Gute's annoyed gaze. You little bastard. I'd be an idiot to believe you. Gute sat down on the chair, his eyebrows slightly furrowed. Xiaoyan. That name sounds familiar. I seem to have heard it somewhere before. Was it, though? Hearing footsteps, Otto turned around. Looking at the smiling Xiaoyan walking toward him, he couldn't help but say with some surprise, You got it. Yes. Smiling and nodding, Xiaoyan cupped his hands to Otto and said gratefully, If Grandmaster Otto hadn't helped today, I'm afraid I would have had to travel all over the world searching for the ice SPI. Rit Cold Spring. It's a small matter. That treasure just sitting in the hands of that old fellow is only wasting a precious item. Making it useful is something I should do. Otto laughed and shook his head, his eyes sweeping over the young man in front of him with a hint of awe. Having known Gute for many years, he hadn't held much hope. After all, hardly anyone would believe that this young Tier 2 alchemist could offer any kind of rare object. However, the smiling young man in front of him personally said that the item was in hand, which truly made Otto a bit curious. He was curious about what item he had used to exchange for the ice spirit. Cold spring from that stingy old man. Although curious in his heart, Otto did not ask. As an old man who had lived for so long, he naturally knew some taboos in transactions. Even though he was extremely curious in his heart, he wisely avoided asking this question. Since Otto didn't ask, Xiaoyan certainly wouldn't idly do such a meaningless thing. The two, understanding each other well, burst into laughter and walked out of the peculiar building. You still need a Tier 3 magical core, right? Walking out of the room, Otto heard Xiaoyan unintentionally reveal this, and asked with a smile. Yes. Xiaoyan said softly, Today I will leave Black Rock City, and head to the eastern border of the Empire for a trip. Therefore, I want to prepare all the necessary items. Going to the imperial border. Hearing this, Otto was stunned, then nodded and chuckled, pondering for a moment. How about this, you follow me back to the Alchemist Guild and wait first. As for the Tier 3 magical core, I will directly send someone to the auction house to help you buy one from the manager. That way you can save time from going to the auction. Hearing these words, Xiaoyan didn't stand on ceremony, and nodded with a smile. That would be troubling Grandmaster Otto then. Alas, since you registered at the Black Rock City Alchemist Guild, you can naturally be considered one of our own. This bit of work is nothing. Otto shook his head, and said casually with a smile. In Otto's words, there was a hint of active goodwill. Regarding this, Xiaoyan hesitated for a moment, then nodded. In the Jiama Empire, the Alchemist Guild was undoubtedly a behemoth no less powerful than the Cloud Mist sect. Having a relationship with them would do him no harm, and if he encountered difficult-to-find materials for refining pills in the future, he could also purchase them through their transactions. Xiaoyan did not overly avoid this good thing. Of course, the reason Xiaoyan did not hesitate to agree was that the Alchemist Guild was not overly restrictive. In their daily affairs, they did not interfere with each other. Only occasionally, and the guild needed alchemists, they would send invitations to some alchemists to assist, and this assistance was not free, but had a very clear compensation. As soon as the two returned to the Alchemist Guild, Otto immediately sent someone to purchase the Tier 3 magical core, and then invited Xiaoyan into the reception room to quietly wait. In the spacious reception room, Otto brought a cup of tea to Xiaoyan, pondered for a long time, and suddenly asked, "Xiaoyan, how long will you be at the border this time?" "Perhaps half a year." "Half a year, you say?" Tapping the table lightly with his finger, Otto smiled and said, "Will you go to the capital of the Jiama Empire after half a year?" "The capital?" Hearing this, Xiaoyan was stunned, then nodded slightly, thinking with a cold smile, "Of course I will go. The Cloud Mist sect is right outside the capital. How can I not go?" Haha. Hearing this, Otto's face showed a few more hints of a smile, and his eyes looking at Xiaoyan also became softer. "Grandmaster Otto, is there something going on?" Looking at Otto's demeanor, Xiaoyan asked with some curiosity. "There is indeed something." Smiling and nodding, Otto said softly, "In half a year, the alchemist grand meeting will be held in the capital. I think if you are free at that time, you can attend. This will be very beneficial for you." Alchemist grand meeting, this name made Xiaoyan feel a bit vague. The Alchemist Grand Meeting not only gathers numerous alchemists of the Jiama Empire, but even some alchemists from neighboring empires come to attend. This is a grand event for the Jiama Empire. It would be a pity to miss it. Oh. If you plan to attend, you can go to the Alchemist General Guild to find Fa Ma. We will all be there by then. Seeing Xiaoyan's shifting expression, Otto said with a smile. "Ah, good. If I'm free at that time, I will definitely go and take a look." Smiling and nodding, Xiaoyan accepted Otto's request. Seeing Xiaoyan agree, Otto smiled and nodded, and talked to him about some matters that needed attention at the grand meeting. While the two were chatting, the person who was tasked with purchasing the Tier 3 magical core also returned, and respectfully handed it to Xiaoyan. The value of this Tier 3 magical core was not less than 200,000 gold coins, but Otto waved his hand to refuse the money. Considering the financial resources of the Alchemist Guild, that amount of money was merely a drop in the bucket. Regarding this free Tier 3 magical core, Xiaoyan could only helplessly accept it. The two chatted for a moment, and then Xiaoyan finally took his leave. Today, he wanted to set off and leave Blackar Ox City. Smiling as he sent Xiaoyan out of the Alchemist Guild, Otto watched the figure gradually disappear, and said softly with a smile, "Xiaoyan, I'll wait for you at the Alchemist Grand Meeting. I hope why. Oh, you can shine there." Walking out of the Alchemist Guild, Xiaoyan looked around, then headed toward the city center where the flight transport team was located. Passing through several unfamiliar intersections and convent. Quietly asking a few passers-by, after more than 10 minutes, Xiaoyan finally stood in front of the flight transport team's plaza. On the plaza were more than 10 huge bird-like beasts. This type of bird-like beast was called the heavy-wing bird. They did not belong to the ranks of magical beasts, but were just a type of bird, an extremely gentle disposition, easily domesticated by humans. However, because their numbers were very small, only the Empire usually had the financial means to establish this type of transport Although this type of heavy-wing bird's speed was much slower than other types of flying magical beasts, they were very durable. With one full meal, they could fly continuously for 4 to 5 days. Moreover, they could carry 5 or 6 times their body weight in cargo and fly for a long time. This type of heavy-wing bird would be forcibly requisitioned by the Empire if war broke out, and only returned to the people after the war ended. Therefore, they were all very experienced in battle. A loud noise strongly hit Xiaoyan's ears, making his ears buzz for a moment before he slowly recovered his senses. Vigorously shaking his head, Xiaoyan looked up at the crowded people in the plaza, and discovered that there was a very long line next to each heavy-wing bird. Even on the wooden ladder by the bird's wing, Xiaoyan could see someone vigorously restraining the bird. Surprised at this scene, after a long while, Xiaoyan shook his head, pulled a passerby, and asked for the ticket office location. Only then did he quickly walk to the southeast corner of the plaza to buy a ticket. Standing in front of the ticket office was a long line of people. Seeing this line, Xiaoyan could only shake his head in frustration and stand at the end of the line to wait. While waiting, the noisy commotion in his ears never stopped. Rubbing his temples with his fingers, Xiaoyan felt a bit envious of Xiao. Only now did he realize how incredibly convenient it was to have a flying magical beast. Just by blowing a flute, one could travel freely across the Douqi continent. Damn it, I must get a flying magical beast later. Gritting his teeth, Xiaoyan said fiercely in his heart. Sir, where would you like to go? Just as Xiaoyan was deep in thought, a female voice suddenly rang out in his mind. Eh? Slightly startled, Xiaoyan realized it was his turn. A beautifully dressed woman was sitting inside the counter, asking with a smile. However, Xiaoyan saw that the smile looked impatient. The eastern border of the empire. Close to the Tiger Desert. Xiaoyan said faintly to the woman in front of him. Hearing this, the woman slightly pouted, quietly complained under her breath, and then tore a piece of specialized animal skin into a ticket. However, when she handed the ticket to Xiaoyan, the impact Yens in her eyes suddenly stopped at the badge on his chest. Instantly, the arm that was handing the ticket suddenly paused, then she frowned slightly and looked closely at Xiaoyan, quickly withdraw the ticket. At the same time, a sweet smile appeared on her face, and she carefully asked, Your Excellency, are you an alchemist? What about it? Xiaoyan asked with a frown. Ha ha. Nothing. It's just that according to the Empire's rules, alchemists are eligible for free flight transport. Therefore, we have flying beasts dedicated solely for alchemists. Seeing Xiaoyan nod, the woman quickly shook her head and said respectfully. Hearing this, Xiaoyan was startled again. A moment later, he couldn't help but sigh with emotion. The status of an alchemist was truly noble. Even this small matter was properly handled by the Empire. No wonder so many people showed respectful expressions just by seeing an alchemist. This profession was far more noble than Xiaoyan had previously anticipated. Looking at the surrounding eyes filled with awe and admiration, Xiaoyan gently patted his black heavy ruler, and then followed the woman inside the counter. You are reading the story at https://tru.yenfalel.vn. Along the way, the somewhat beautiful woman, whether intentionally or unintentionally, continuously swayed her large hips and small waist, revealing arc-like curves. Although not stunningly beautiful, paired with her tight-fitting clothes, it was enough to make people want to erupt in fire. Walking behind, Xiaoyan merely glanced briefly, then retracted his gaze. He was not the type of person whose mind was overcome by lust, so he was not interested in unrestrained behavior that would mess up other things. After passing through a corridor, a bird-like beast that looked no smaller than the heavy-winged bird appeared in Xiaoyan's sight. His gaze swept over this aggressive-looking gigantic bird-like beast. Xiaoyan was slightly surprised to discover that it was unexpectedly a flying magical beast. Judging by its aura, it was probably only Tier 1, but Xiaoyan sensed the wind attribute energy circulating around its body, indicating that this was a wind attribute flying magical beast. Its flying speed was much faster than other types of flying magical beasts. On the back of the flying magical beast, there was a small room made of a light, specialized type of wood, firmly tied to the beast's body. Inside that room, there were unexpectedly several smaller rooms. Xiaoyan's gaze briefly detected that 2 rooms were already occupied, and judging by the uniforms, they were clearly alchemists. Your Excellency, this is a flying magical beast. It will fly to the eastern border of the Jiama Empire. The city there is the closest to the Tiger Desert. Stopping in front of the magical beast, woman said softly. Slightly nodding, Xiaoyan's toes lightly touched the ground. His body slowly landed on the broad back of the bird, and then the woman left the room with a look of resentment. This was Xiaoyan's first time on this flying magical beast. He naturally didn't know that, as a noble alchemist, he was qualified to enjoy close personal service. And the meaning of close personal service was something that men would understand. The woman who led the way earlier had acted that way, hoping Xiaoyan would allow her to be a traveling maid. However, Xiaoyan was not very adept at th. So her intentions were directly rejected. Not long after Xiaoyan boarded the flying magical beast, another alchemist boarded. A moment later, Xiaoyan finally felt the magical beast's huge wings slowly flap. Surges of wind attribute energy whirled beneath its body, and finally, the magical beast's body soared high into the air. After a clear cry, the flying magical beast, under the command of the beast tamer, quickly swooped and flew toward the eastern part of the empire. Sitting by the room window, Xiaoyan watched the clouds gradually being left behind. 2 words, airplane, suddenly appeared in his memory. These 2 words now seemed distant, and he smiled bitterly. Shaking his head. After a moment, Xiaoyan calmed himself down, and slowly entered the cultivation state. Black Rock City was quite far from the eastern border. Even though this flying magical beast was very fast, it would still take 3 days to reach the destination. Xiaoyan was unwilling to waste kind of time. The sky gradually darkened. Xiaoyan, who was earnestly cultivating, was suddenly startled by an unusual sound. Slowly opening his eyes, Xiaoyan found that the moon was up, radiating a faint light that dispelled a portion of the darkness from the sky. Gently exhaling a mouthful of murky air, Xiaoyan helplessly looked toward the room on the left. The sound of a man panting and a woman moaning, like a demonic melody, deeply pierced his brain. Usually coming through. Damn it! Cursing under his breath, Xiaoyan finally understood why the woman earlier had continuously provoked him. It turned out there was this kind of service available. Shaking his head helplessly, Xiaoyan dared not continue cultivating in this state. Sighing, he took out the blood lotus essence, the ice spirit flame herb, and the tier 3 magical core from his storage. Ring, carefully placed them on the table, and then flicked his finger at the pitch-black ring. Yao Lao gently emerged from within. How is it? Can we refine the blood lotus pill now? Glancing at the 3 types of materials on the table, Yao Lao said with a smile. I've prepared everything early for master. We should finish it quickly, after all. If luck is good, we might quickly encounter a heavenly flame. Xiaoyan smiled and nodded. Hearing this, Yao Lao smiled and did not refuse. His figure flew onto the tabletop, and he nodded, that's good too. The blood lotus pill is a tier 5 high-grade medicinal pill. The refining process indeed requires about 2 days. If you are free now, we might as well do it immediately. Tier 5 medicinal pill. Hearing this, Xiaoyan was slightly startled. He hadn't thought the blood lotus pill would reach this tier. A tier 5 medicinal pill could probably only be refined by the pill King Guhi in the entire Jiama Empire. Observe and learn well. Watching the process of refining high-tier medicinal pills will be very beneficial for you. Reminding Xiaoyan, Yao Lao slowly revealed his palm. Instantly, a pale white flame rose from his palm. Looking at this pale white flame, Xiaoyan couldn't help but lick his lips. That was the heavenly flame he longed for day and night. Calmly looking at the pale white flame in his hand, and waiting for it to blaze high, Yao Lao gently breathed a sigh of relief. Then he tossed the tier 3 magical core into it, and the process of refin. The blood lotus pill began in midair. Chapter 173. For 3 days of the flight, Xiaoyan rested on the flying magical beast. Although there were 2 or 3 rest stops along the way, he never ventured out, staying in the small room, meticulously absorbing the process of Yao Lao refining the medicinal pill into his mind. This time, refining the pill took Yao Lao 2 days, and that was with the aid of a heavenly flame, Ihua. If it were any other ordinary alchemist to successfully refine the blood lotus pill, it would likely take no less than 10 days. Imprinting the entire process of Yao Lao refining the medicinal pill into his mind, Xiaoyan felt he gained significant benefits. At the same time, he also discovered that his own flame heat control, in the eyes of a grandmaster alchemist, truly counted for nothing. For example, this time refining the blood lotus pill, although it only required a mere 3 types of ingredients, the inherent complexity of the process astonished Xiaoyan into speechlessness. He secretly mused that if it were him, he would have probably incinerated all the medicinal materials in the very first step. Outside the small room, layers of clouds slowly retreated backward. After 2 days of burning in the heavenly flame, a blood-red medicinal pill the size of a longan was rapidly spinning a few inches above Yao Lao's palm. Judging by this appearance, it seemed to have reached the final stage of pill condensation. Licking his lips, he punched his numbed legs, his gaze casually sweeping outside the window, when he suddenly felt the air had become much hotter. "We've arrived," he murmured, rubbing his dark-rimmed eyes. Then, he turned his head, his gaze once again focusing on Yao Lao's body floating in the air. Despite 2 days of non-stop refining, Yao Lao's complexion remained as calm as ever. It seemed that such a prolonged expenditure of energy was insignificant to him. The pill is about to succeed. Even Xiaoyan couldn't help but feel immense admiration when he heard Yao Lao say this indifferently. Hearing this, Xiaoyan hurriedly took out a jade bottle of excellent quality from his storage ring, then carefully placed it on the table, and stood up to retreat a few steps backward. Glancing at the jade bottle on the table, Yao Lao nodded slightly. His palm trembled slightly, and the milky white flame surged higher, then completely enveloped the medicinal pill. Following several rapid flares of the white flame, a fierce surge of energy suddenly pressed out from within the fire. After a moment, a ripple of energy diffused out from the small room. After the energy ripple spread out, the flying magical beast was startled and trembled. Its massive body swayed a few times, and the sound of its calls, tinged with fear, echoed in the air. Sensing the sudden energy fluctuation and the flying magical beast change, Xiaoyan's expression slightly shifted. Furthermore, at the same time, the blood-colored medicinal pill suddenly emitted an extremely rich medicinal fragrance. This fragrance was light red, spreading out from the room, and finally lingering like a small cloud in the sky. This is an anomaly created when a 4th-tier medicinal pill or higher forms. Guard the door. Give me a few minutes of peace to collect the pill. Yao Lao stared intently at the flame in his hand, S expression unchanged, and said in a deep voice, "Be careful of those fellow alchemists." Understood. Nodding seriously, Xiaoyan had already noticed that as the unusual fragrance wafted outside, a slight commotion began in the other small rooms on the giant bird's back. A 4th-tier medicinal pill HELD, a fatal attraction for many people. Some would even risk their lives to obtain it. Xiaoyan gripped the heavy Xian ruler on his back with a serious hand. He turned, opened the room door, and then stood outside with an unchanged expression. Just shortly after standing at the door, 4 figures in somewhat disheveled clothing rushed out from the other rooms. Their eyes swept across the corridor, and then their icy expressions settled upon Xiaoyan's body. The 4 people's gazes stopped at the 2nd-tier emblem on Xiaoyan's chest, and a hint of surprise flashed in their eyes. They exchanged a look, and their eyes held an unspoken meaning. While the 4 were sizing up Xiaoyan also quickly scanned the 4 people. Among them was 1 old man and 3 middle-aged men around 30 years old. The old man wore a 3rd-tier alchemist emblem on his chest. Of the 3 others, 2 were 2nd-tier alchemists, the same rank as Xiaoyan, and 1 was a 1st-tier alchemist. "Ah, little friend, I am Ha Lang." The old man stared intently at the waves of pink fragrance continuously flowing out from Xiaoyan's room. He narrowed his eyes, and a hint of greed flashed deep within. He lightly coughed twice, slowly approached Xiaoyan, and spoke amicably. Xiaoyan lightly glanced at the old man who was feigning friendliness. He didn't reply, and the hand gripping the heavy Xian ruler tightened even more. "Ah, little friend, did the sudden energy fluctuation just now come from inside here?" "We have no other intentions, we just came to inquire. After all, everyone is currently several thousand meters up in the air. If anything happens, we could all be in danger." Ignoring Xiaoyan's indifferent attitude, the old man continued to speak with a beaming smile. "That's right, little brother. Everyone is essentially in the same boat. It's best not to cause any dangerous incidents as that benefits no one." "That is." Another second-tier alchemist, though Smil ing outwardly, had a grin that didn't reach his eyes. His gaze vaguely swept across the small room, and he clearly swallowed. Hearing the two speak, the remaining two middle-aged men also chimed in, equally unwilling to be left behind, simultaneously hinting at wanting to enter the room to check. "My master is refining a medicinal pill inside. You are all professionals and should understand that it won't affect the flying magical beast. Please give me some face, return to your rooms and do no disturb him. Otherwise." Xiaoyan glanced at the four people with ill intentions before him and said coldly. "The story you are reading is sourced from Thien Full www. Thien Full. Ah, little friend is joking. We have no such intention. It's just that, as you know, at this altitude of thousands of meters, if an accident were to occur, no one could bear the responsibility. Morio. If your master chose to ride a flying magical beast, he naturally hasn't reached the state of Do Chi wings, Do Chi transformed wings. If something truly happens," the old man named Ha Lang said with a cheerful expression. However, despite the calm smile, he still couldn't conceal the greed and ruthlessness beneath. Although he also understood that the mysterious alchemist inside was of a higher rank than himself, the opponent was currently refining a pill. This act strictly forbade distraction. If they weren't artful, ruining the pill was a minor matter. If they suffered a backlash, they might even become crippled. Hence, he had enough audacity to be here. "Little brother, we just want to check a little, we won't cause any trouble. Please kindly step aside." The middle-aged second-tier alchemist also knew that now was the best opportunity, so he dared not delay further. He took a step forward, his palm carrying concealed Do Chi, as he thrust it rapidly toward Xiaoyan. "Get lost." Seeing this person's bold move, Xiaoyan's face turned cold. His hands suddenly clenched. A violet flame instantly flared up, carrying a fierce force that heavily slammed into the middle-aged man's outstretched palm. Thud. A muffled sound echoed. Xiaoyan quickly retreated a few steps, only stabilizing himself right against the room door. With Xiaoyan's strength as an ordinary Do master, and that big fellow Ha Ving long since entered 3-star Do master. Although Xiaoyan gained the upper hand by relying on his violet flame Do Chi, it was still not an easy victory. Having taken Xiaoyan's blow, the second-tier alchemist quickly retreated a few steps, then suddenly clutched his hand and let out a painful wail. When the others looked, they were somewhat horrified to find that this person's fist had turned bright red, with blood vaguely seeping out, looking quite terrifying. Actual fire, Shihua. No, this young man is a bit strange. Attack. Tagu. The pill inside is about to be refined. Seeing the violet flame flaring on Xiaoyan's hand, the old man's face changed drastically. He then turned and yelled at another middle-aged second-tier alchemist. Judging by their demeanor, he and that person knew each other. Hearing the old man shout, the middle-aged man, whose strength was slightly greater than the previous second-tier alchemist, nodded. He walked up to Xiaoyan, his right foot kicking up toward Xiaowai. The pressure of the Do Chi emanating from his foot caused Xiaoyan's expression to become serious. Damn it! Cursing inwardly, Xiaoyan put the heavy Xian ruler into his storage ring. At the same time, his foot stomped fiercely on the floor, and his body shot up toward the middle-aged man. 8 extremes collapse. He shouted coldly. Xiaoyan clenched his right fist and swung it fiercely. The terrifying force generated a series of sharp sonic waves. Boom! Fist and foot met heavily. Under Xiaoyan's full-force attack, even though the middle-aged man hadn't underestimated him, he was still violently sent flying backward by the terrifying force on the fists. Thud. The middle-aged man heavily slammed into the room wall. Immediately, wood chips flew everywhere, and the small room was destroyed. Once the room was destroyed, the blue sky outside and the hazy clouds were revealed. Looking at the pale-faced middle-aged man lying on the edge of the flying magical beast, Xiaoyan sneered, wanting to quickly press the attack and knock him off the beast's back, but a burst of smug otter startled him. Turning his head back, he saw that the old man with the sinister expression had already appeared in front of the room door. He turned back, smiled smugly at Xiaoyan, and said gloomily, "Little fellow. Wait for me to deal with the one inside, and then I'll take care of you." Having said that, the old man punched the wooden door. Immediately, wood fragments flew everywhere. To the sound of the old man's smug laughter, the room door loudly burst open. Casually grabbing a handful of wood fragments that flew his way, the old man was about to enter the room with a smiling face, when a ghostly figure suddenly darted out. Floating eerily in the air, a withered old hand clamped tightly onto the old man's throat. "You wanted to take care of me?" A faint voice sounded by his ear, causing the old man's pupils to contract. Hearing the old voice coming from the room, Xiaoyan finally let out a sigh of relief. The old man who had just lunged into the room slowly backed out. At this moment, a withered, old hand like a hawk's claw, tightly locked around his throat. Ha Lang's face was terrified as he looked at the cold-faced old man before him. Although he was restrained due to being caught off guard, when the man's hand clamped onto his throat, Ha Lang was horrified to discover that the dou qi in his body, which usually flowed freely, seemed to be restrained. No matter how much he urged it, the dou qi in his body was like dead air, without a trace of strength. By now, no matter how foolish Ha Lang was, he understood that the old man before him was fundamentally not just a little stronger than him. Judging solely by the strength in the opponent's hand, this strength was at least 2 ranks higher than his. Heavens! This old man clearly has the strength of dou qi wings, so why is he riding on a flying magical beast, whose speed isn't even considered fast? Groaning mournfully in his heart, Ha Lang laboriously moved his throat, his voice hoarse, "Your Excellency. We had no intention of offending you. We just wanted to ensure our safety." Yao Lao glanced at him coldly. His right hand slightly lifted, and a jade bottle appeared in his hand. Inside the bottle, a blood-colored medicinal pill the size of a longan could be vaguely seen rolling around. "You want this, right?" Raising the jade bottle in his hand, Yao Lao said with a faint smile. Seeing Ha Lang easily subdued by Yao Lao without any ability to resist, the remaining 3 middle-aged men's faces turned pale with fright. They anxiously retreated a few steps backward, their hearts pounding in fear. The greedy thoughts in their minds gradually vanished. They now realized how incredibly foolish their actions had been. Your Excellency is joking. How could we dare to have such intentions? If we weren't worried about the energy fluctuation hindering the flight path, we wouldn't dare disturb you. Ha Lan Ji swallowed his saliva, his eyes darting around as he smiled nervously. "You didn't say that earlier." Xiaoyan walked to the room entrance, leaning against the wooden wall. His eyes coldly glanced at Ha Lang and mocked. Earlier. It was just a joke." Ha Lang gave a forced, dry laugh. He lowered his head slightly, and a hint of malicious resentment flashed in his eyes. His long sleeve slightly dropped. ASMA. LL packet of black powder fell from his sleeve into his palm. The story you are reading is copied from Thien Full. I originally didn't intend to kill anyone. But since you are courting death, I can't be blamed. Just as the packet of powder in Ha Lang's hand was about to be thrown out, Yao Lao gently sighed and shook his head. A cold smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. From the palm gripping Ha Lang's neck, the milky white flame suddenly erupted. Ah! As soon as the bone-chilling white flame touched Ha Lang's skin, the intense pain caused his eyes to widen. His body convulsed like a spring. A mournful scream echoed. In just a few short seconds, his entire body was completely consumed by the bone-chilling white flame. Seeing that in just a moment, Ha Lang had turned into a pile of black ashes, the people present, including Xiaoyan, couldn't help but gasp in shock. This is the power of a heavenly flame. Xiaoyan watched the scene, with a heart surging like waves. Although Yao Lao had used the heavenly flame to kill once before in Wuten City, Luxi's strength was merely that of a Dou practitioner. So Xiaoyan's feelings weren't as deeply etched. But now, right before his eyes, a genuine great Dou master was reduced to ash in the heavenly flame in just a few seconds. Heavenly flame, ah! No wonder so many people desperately seek it. This kind of power. TSK is truly captivating. Sighing and shaking his head, Xiaoyan had to admit that after witnessing the power of the heavenly flame, his own intense desire and anticipation for it only grew stronger. Yao Lao indifferently glanced at the pile of ashes. His sleeve gently fluttered. A light breeze instantly swept the ashes clean. He handed the jade bottle containing the blood lotus pill to Xiaoyan. And then lightly clapped his hands. Carefully receiving the jade bottle, Xiaoyan gently placed it into his storage ring. He tilted his head back and let out a light sigh of relief. His eyes coldly looked toward the three middle-aged men, whose faces were now ghastly pale. He smiled and asked, "Teacher, how should we deal with them?" Since they had the resolve to kill people and seize the pill, they should naturally know what price they must pay after failing. Yao Lao said indifferently. He glanced over the three people, and with a flip of his hand, the bone-chilling white flame flared up again. "Jump off yourselves." Hearing Yao Lao speak so calmly, the three people's bodies instantly trembled. They fearfully lowered their heads and glanced at the ground over 1,000 meters below. Their legs continuously shook. Xiaoyan hugged his arms across his chest and coldly watched the three people descend into despair and fear. He felt no sympathy in his heart. He knew that if the positions were reversed, these few Opal would absolutely kill him, and Yao Lao without a second thought. Once others had no intention of showing mercy, Xiaoyan could only cast aside his emotions when facing them. Without raising his head to look at the three terrified individuals, Yao Lao slowly raised his finger. Wisp after wisp of the bone-chilling white flame continuously erupted from his palm. The heavy atmosphere lasted for a moment. The first-tier alchemist middle-aged man finally couldn't endure this oppressive atmosphere. With a strained scream, Douqi quickly enveloped his body. Then, with a fierce glare in his eyes, he charged toward Xiaoyan. It seemed he hadn't completely lost his mind, still knowing he should choose the softest target to chew on. During the middle-aged man's attempt to counterattack, one of the remaining two second-tier alchemists also took out a longsword from his storage ring. After a shout, he too charged fiercely toward Xiaoyan. He knew in his heart that if he could just capture Xiaoyan and use him as a hostage, his life could surely be saved today. Ignoring the two rushing toward him, Yao Lao paused slightly, gently extended his fingertip, and a wisp of bone-chilling white flame shot out from his palm like a hidden dart. The lightning-fast flame pierced through the body of the first-tier alchemist. Instantly, his body was consumed and turned into a pile of ashes. Having killed a first-tier alchemist as easily as killing a chicken, Yao Lao extended his finger again toward the second-tier alchemist who was charging. At that moment, a muffled sound was heard belatedly, causing Yao Lao's finger to suddenly halt. His eyebrows slightly furrowed, and he looked up with interest. Pfft. At this moment, the second-tier alchemist rushing toward Xiaoyan's body suddenly stiffened in place. A mouthful of fresh blood sprayed out wildly from his mouth. He slowly lowered his head to look at the cold, blood-stained sword tip sticking out from his stomach. You. He turned his head laboriously, the second-tier alchemist glaring fiercely at his companion who had suddenly attacked him. His voice was hoarse with venomous resentment. You will also die here. Solutely, you won't escape. He will not let you go. Hearing this, the other second-tier alchemist's face became even more frantic. The long sword in his hand fiercely stabbed deeper, then he violently pulled it out. Fresh blood spurted out and splat tear onto his body. Looking at his companion's body softly falling, the second-tier alchemist desperately inhaled deeply. He suddenly turned toward Yao Lao and shouted, "Your Excellency, I am willing to follow you. Please. Grant me a path to life." Xiaoyan quietly watched the scene of internal cruelty unfold before his eyes. After a long while, he let out a breath. Human nature is insidious. In the future, if you ever face a desperate situation, never turn your back to someone untrustworthy, because you might be stabbed in the chest with an unexpected sword. Ignoring the second-tier alchemist whose expression was fawning and flattering, Yao Lao tilted his head to look at Xiaoyan and said indifferently. Xiaoyan tightly clenched his fist and nodded slightly. This scene that unfolded before him taught him a great deal. This person, deal with him as you see fit. I don't need this kind of follower. Slowly turning around, Yao Lao walked into the inner room, leaving Xiaoyan with a gentle sentence. Nodding, Xiaoyan inhaled. A trace of coldness flashed across his slightly smiling face. A moment after entering the room, Yao Lao heard a heavy sound from outside the door and gently nodded. His finger slightly extended, and the bone-chilling white flame on his fingertip gradually dissipated. Humph. Xiaoyan pushed the door open and entered. At this moment, a faint smell of blood wafted from his body. Seeing Yao Lao approach, Xiaoyan shrugged and smiled. If this kind of person were to stay by our side, he might try to backstab us someday. Therefore, I kicked him off. Nodding casually, Yao Lao's gaze penetrated the window, looking at the distant, flat ground. A glimmer of light appeared on his face, and he said with a smile, "Tager Desert, Thap Kwani Di Sa Mak. We've arrived. Let's go. The rest of the journey, we will have to fly ourselves, lest the disappearance of 4 alchemists when the flying magical beast lands causes some unnecessary commotion and delays us." Having spoken, Yao Lao's body transformed into a streak of light, entering the storage ring on Xiaoyan's finger. At the same time, the violet cloud wings on Xiaoyan's back made a sound and spread up. Gently flapping the violet cloud wings behind him, Xiaoyan opened the window and immediately jumped down. The fierce wind whistled past his ears. Xiaoyan's wings flapped. The violet doqi gradually enveloped his body. He looked up at the enormous wings of the flying magical beast not far away and smiled calmly. After a brief pause, his flight speed suddenly increased, transforming into a streak of violet light that quickly overtook the flying magical beast. Far away in the sky, the streak of violet light, like a shooting star chasing the moon, briefly streaked across the horizon, flying toward the city nestled within the vast expanse of golden sands. The city drew closer and closer. Intense waves of heat rushed at him. Xiaoyan squinted his eyes at the boundless area of golden yellow sand and lightly exhaled. The final place of training, the Tager Desert, has finally arrived. A few hundred meters from the city, Xiaoyan's flight speed gradually slowed down. His body trembled slightly. The violet cloud wings on his back emitted faint bursts of light, slowly contracting and finally transforming into a tattoo that adhered to Xiaoyan's back. His body performed a turn in midair, and Xiaoyan's feet landed steadily on the ground. He lightly brushed off some dust from his clothes, then looked up. A massive golden city appeared at the end of his vision, and he smiled while letting out a sigh of relief. Perhaps due to the proximity to the desert, the weather here was somewhat dry and hot. The scorching sun shone down from the sky, baking the ground beneath his feet, so that it continuously radiated waves of heat. This heat slowly rose, causing a distorted and hazy illusion in people's vision. Normally, in such an environment, there wouldn't be much comfort, and no one should feel at ease. However, Xiaoyan was surprised to find that ever since his feet stepped on this land, the violet flame Idochi flowing in his body suddenly became much more vigorous. Slightly astonished, Xiaoyan reached out and grabbed at the space in front of him a few times, then parted his lips and tasted the air. After a long moment, he suddenly understood and said softly, "Oh wonder, almost 80% of the energy in the air here is of the earth attribute and fire attribute. Yes, the Tagar Desert's terrain is suitable for people cultivating fire attribute and earth attribute cultivation methods. And your violet flame is a special flame related to the sun, so you naturally feel more sensitive than ordinary people." Yao Lao's faint laughing voice came from the ring. "This is also the reason why I wanted you to come to the desert for training. The harsh conditions here are very suitable for tempering," he continued. Slightly nodding, Xiaoyan lightly exhaled. He patted the exquisite alchemist robe on his body, which was crafted like a work of art, and then slowly walked toward the golden city not far away. The closer he got to the city, the more passers-by there were. Most of the men passing by had bare arms and dark complexions. With just a glance, they seemed somewhat bold and unrestrained. The women who occasionally passed by, though also slightly dark-skinned, leaned toward a seductive bronze color. The women here were not as reserved and shy as the women within the empire. Their leather outfits were tight-fitting, just covering their chests and lower bodies. Their slender waists were bare, and their long, thin legs were wrapped only in short strips of cloth around their thighs. As they walked, their waists swayed like winding water snakes, an incredibly captivating allure and style. Walking along the road, Xiaoyan felt his horizons broaden. He clicked his tongue and looked up, now able to clearly see the scale of the golden city. He saw that above the city gate, 2 large, blood-red characters were carved into the city wall. Looking from afar, it conveyed a faint sense of bloodshed. "Mo City, Macton." He softly murmured the name. Xiaoyan smiled and slowly walked toward the city gate. At the gate, more than 10 soldiers in armor, holding long spears, were shouting at passers-by entering the city to pay the entrance tax. Looking at those soldiers, who were heavily armed despite the heat, Xiaoyan was slightly surprised. Why is the defense here even more rigorous than in a colossal city like Black Rock City? Perhaps due to the scorching weather, the guards and soldiers here were somewhat agitated by the heat. Shouts of reprimand rang out without any politeness, continuously urging those entering the city. Approaching the city gate, hearing the shouts from the soldiers' mouths, Xiaoyan slightly frowned and shook his head. He then walked directly into the city. In the Jiama Empire, alchemists were almost a profession that enjoyed privileges no different from the nobility. At city gates, the empire had an order exempting them from paying the entrance fee. Although the money was insignificant to an alchemist, this bit of respect indeed satisfied all alchemists. "Hey, young man, didn't you see what's written here?" Xiaoyan walked straight through the city gate, acting as if no one else was there. One soldier's eyes immediately widened. However, before his shout completely finished, the extremely exquisite alchemist robe on Xiaoyan's body flashed into his view. Immediately, the curse he was about to utter was hastily swallowed. The look of anger on his face transformed into a fawning, ingratiating smile. "Your Excellency, you wish to enter the city?" Without stopping his steps, Xiaoyan slowly walked toward the soldier, glancing at him indifferently. Then, his heel slightly lifted, and he brushed past the soldier, walking into the city. Gulp. Seeing that Xiaoyan did not dwell on his earlier offense, the soldier's face showed a flash of relief. Swallowing a mouthful of saliva, he quickly turned and shouted, "Your Excellency, Reese. NTLY, the snake people in the Tager Desert have been a bit restless. If you plan to leave the city, you should exercise some caution." Xiaoyan's steps paused slightly. Having received this unexpected piece of information, he nodded slightly. Then, his figure slowly disappeared into the shadow of the city wall's passage. Damn it, I almost screwed up. If my superior knew that this old man offended a second-tier alchemist, they'd feed me to the dogs. Watching Xiaoyan's disappearing back, the soldier finally let out a complete sigh of relief. Wiping away a fresh bead of cold sweat, when he returned to his post, perhaps due to the lingering fear, he restrained himself considerably, no longer daring to shout at the passers-by entering the city. Slowly walking out of the dark city wall passage, his vision brightened. A unique cluster of desert city architecture appeared in his sight. Row upon row of oddly constructed buildings slightly broad. Ned Xiaoyan's horizons. Standing at the intersection, Xiaoyan's eyes swept over the people walking on the street. After a moment, he asked inwardly with some surprise, "Master, where to now? Should we just head straight int? Oh, the Tager Desert. If you just blindly walk into the desert as you suggested, even if you don't get lost and buried in the sand, you'll sooner or later die of thirst from the lack of water." Yao Lao's scolding voice ca. Me from the ring. The story you are reading is sourced from website name. Smiling awkwardly, Xiaoyan cleared his throat and said, "It's my first time coming to the desert, too. What should we do next?" "First, go buy an accurate map of the Tager Desert. There should be a shop specializing in selling maps in the city. This is very important. Also, prepare sufficient water supplies. Furthermore, go to a pharmacy and buy some snake-repelling medicine. The snake people in the Tager Desert are most skilled at using poisonous snakes for attack. Being careful is not excessive," Yao Lao pondered. "If you prepare all those things properly, there probably won't be enough time to enter the Tager Desert immediately today, so find a place to stay overnight in the city. By the way, the chi recovery pills you had are all used up. Those are necessary for your training. Fortunately, the medicinal materials collected in the valley in the magical Beast Mountain range last time are enough. I'll refine some tonight. Once everything is prepared, tomorrow morning, we will immediately begin our journey into the Tager Desert." Hearing the long list of tasks from Yao Lao, Xiaoyan nodded helplessly. Letting out a sigh, he casually pulled a passerby and asked for directions to a desert map shop. The passerby pulled by Xiaoyan initially showed a hint of impatience on his face. However, when he saw the alchemist emblem pinned to Xiaoyan's chest, the impatient look quickly receded. He showed extreme politeness and enthusiasm, pointing out the location of the shop to Xiaoyan. Even when Xiaoyan thanked him and said goodbye, the man was still passionately talking, even covering the price of the map. Saying his thanks to the passerby, Xiaoyan lightly stroked the alchemist emblem on his chest and sighed, shaking his head. He had to admit it. This identity was truly very practical. With an inward sigh, Xiaoyan quickly turned the corner, then followed the passerby's directions toward the best map shop in Mo City. After walking unhurriedly for a while, a map shop named Gutu Ancient Map appeared in Xiaoyan's sight. His gaze swept over the shop's exterior. Xiaoyan was slightly surprised. This shop was far from the flamboyant and magnificent stores. It had a faint, ancient, and unadorned feel to it. Carrying a hint of surprise, Xiaoyan slowly walked into the shop. The interior was not overly spacious. Two moonlight stones emitted a faint glow, providing some light to the shop. His gaze swept arrow. The interior. There were no customers inside buying maps. The quiet, desolate atmosphere made Xiaoyan wonder if he had come to the wrong place. Slowly walking toward the front of the shop, Xiaoyan glanced over. Standing at the back of the counter, an old man was hunched over, meticulously carving something. This old man was clearly quite early. Although his hair was completely white, the withered hand holding the carving knife was still extremely steady and forceful. Without speaking to disturb the old man, Xiaoyan's gaze swept over the maps on the counter. He enthusiastically picked up a few to flip through. The clear routes on the maps made him nod in satisfaction. After examining them for a while, Xiaoyan saw that the old man still had no intention of stopping. He clicked his tongue slightly and once again slowly walked toward a corner inside the shop, Aravan. At an ancient wooden shelf. This wooden shelf was clearly quite old. Its surface was rotten with holes, and a pile of yellowed, damaged maps was haphazardly stacked on it. The surfaces of these maps bore signs of damage, seeming being failed attempts at map making, discarded as scrap. His hand casually brushed away the dust on the pile of yellowed maps. A faint musty odor wafted up. Frowning slightly, Xiaoyan picked up the pile of discarded maps. As his hand trembled slightly, a small, incomplete fragment, only the size of a palm, suddenly dropped out from the pile of scraps. Not paying too much attention to the fallen fragment, Xiaoyan flipped through the discarded maps in his hand, then placed them back down with boredom. Just as he was placing them back, his lazy gaze caught the small, incomplete fragment. His eyes first blinked slightly, then, his moving hand suddenly froze. His hand trembled slightly as he cautiously picked up the incomplete fragment. Xiaoyan suddenly felt his heart pounding fiercely. He forced himself to swallow a mouthful of saliva, placing the incomplete fragment in his hand. His eyes, filled with ecstatic joy, meticulously scanned the slightly familiar, mysterious lines on the fragment. After a long while, Xiaoyan slowly closed his eyes, inhaled deeply, and muttered tremblingly, "It truly is it." Chapter 176. His hands tremblingly lifted the tattered picture, which looked as if it would turn into dust with just a touch. Xiaoyan's eyes couldn't conceal his ecstatic joy. He hadn't thought that here, under extremely random circumstances, he would find a portion of the mysterious fragmented picture. Looking at the mysterious routes on the yellowish picture, although Xiaoyan still didn't understand the profoundness within, these routes made him vaguely feel somewhat familiar, because he had once seen a similar mysterious picture in the cave in the magical Beast Mountain range. When he and Xiaoxian were searching for treasure. This mysterious map represented the key to finding the purifying demonic lotus flame, ranked third in the legendary, heavenly flame rankings. This type of heavenly flame was rated extremely highly even by Yao Lao. When the words purifying demonic lotus flame came out of his mouth, it was not difficult for Xiaoyan to detect a hint of awe and sigh in his voice. To be able to make Yao Lao, who once stood at the peak of the Dochi continent, sigh repeatedly like this, one could see just how powerful the purifying demonic lotus flame truly was. To describe it with burning all 10,000 things seemed not at all an exaggeration. TSK, luck truly comes naturally. Without any prior clue, you unexpectedly found a piece of this fragmented map in a place like this. It seems you and the purifying demonic lotus flame truly have some fate, Yao Lao's surprised voice, containing a hint of incredulity, rang out in Xiaoyan's heart. Clearly, he had never thought that Xiaoyan could obtain 2 pieces of the mysterious fragmented map within a short year. Xiaoyan chuckled, his smile revealing a bit of excitement. He carefully held the mysterious fragmented picture, forcefully suppressing his impulse, took out another piece of the map from his storage ring, meticulously compared the two, and then took a deep breath, trying to calm the excitement in his heart brought by this extremely unexpected gain. Just at this moment, the white-haired old man in the shop finally finished the work. In his hand, However, he still did not raise his head, and his old voice rang out calmly in the room. You want to buy a map of the Tager Desert? Hearing the old man's question, Xiaoyan finally turned around, slowly walked to the counter and smiled and nodded. He politely said, Old sir, could you give me the most accurate desert map? The items are on the counter. Choose for yourself. The old man did not intend to stand up and introduce them. Instead, he just said indifferently. This demeanor was extremely unlike a businessman. Looking at the old man's peculiar attitude, Xiaoyan was a bit surprised. However, since he had a request now, he could only nod helplessly, casually picked a map from the counter that looked very detailed, then carefully opened the fragmented map piece in his palm, and softly inquired, Old sir, I wonder if you still have this kind of fragmented map here. Hearing Xiaoyan's question, the hand that was originally focused on carving suddenly and uncontrollably trembled. The meticulously carved route slightly deviated. Slightly furrowing his brow, the old man finally slowly looked up. His gaze swept over the fragmented map in Xiaoyan's hand. In his aged, murky eyes, a hint of meaningful and incomprehensible expression flashed. Looking at the old man's face as he looked up, Xiaoyan couldn't help but be slightly stunned. On his face, from his left cheekbone to the corner of his eye, there was a scar that made people look at it in fear. Although the old man's eyes were calm, this scar still gave him a hint of concealed fierce aura. Have you seen this kind of fragmented map before? His eyes looked at the long robe on Xiaoyan's body, which represented the identity of an alchemist. The old man's voice carried a hint of surprise. Hearing this, Xiaoyan's eyes slightly narrowed. He smiled and shook his head, saying, I once saw this kind of fragmented map at an auction house. I casually bid for it at the time. But in the end, because the other party offered a very high price, I let it go. Today, I suddenly saw it here at your place, old sir. This piece of fragmented map seems somewhat similar to the one I saw before, so I wanted to ask. The purifying demonic lotus flame was no ordinary item. This kind of flame, ranked third on the heavenly flame rankings, was enough to make anyone, even reclusive individuals, harbor greed. Therefore, Xiaoyan would not be foolish enough to directly say that he carried a portion of the fragmented map with him. You are reading the story at https://truyenful.vn. Oh. His gaze swept over Xiaoyan's face. The old man seemed to believe his words and said indifferently, No. I only obtained this piece by chance. Based on my many years of experience making maps, this piece seems to be just an incomplete map. Old sir, could you tell me where you obtained it? Xiaoyan asked with a frown. In the desert. The old man's tone was calm, without any hesitation. Regarding the old man's non-answer, Xiaoyan smiled bitterly. He held the fragmented picture in his hand and said, Old sir, could you sell me this piece of the map? I am willing to pay a high price. No. The old man slowly lowered his head, once again focusing his attention on the unfinished map in his hand. Although his tone was calm, his attitude was undoubtedly very firm. Hearing a direct refusal, Xiaoyan was stunned. His eyes gradually became determined. No matter what, he absolutely had to get this piece of the fragmented map. Let alone if the opponent was just a seemingly weak old man, even if he were a true strong expert, he still had to get it. After all, the lure of the purifying demonic lotus flame was simply too great for him. Perhaps in the future, for the flame mantra to evolve into a heaven-tier technique, the role of the purifying demonic lotus flame, ranked third on the heavenly flame rankings, would be a very important threshold. Just as Xiaoyan's mind was churning with thoughts, Yao Lao's voice suddenly rang out in his heart, Be careful. This old fellow is not an ordinary person. Hearing this, Xiaoyan suddenly shuddered and quickly said in his mind, Master, is this old man strange? Yes. According to my perception, this old fellow's true strength is at the Do King level. However, he seems to be suppressed by a strange force. His current strength in his body is only at the Do spirit level. But even so, killing you is as easy as turning his hand. Yao Lao said with interest. Do King. His heart trembled. Xiaoyan exclaimed in his mind, how is that possible? Among the top 10 strong experts of the Jiama Empire, only 3 are Do King strong experts, so how could a Do King strong expert appear here? How would I know? But the strong experts you mentioned are only those on the surface. The Jiama Empire is considered a major empire. There are always quite a few strong experts who don't like to show their faces, some eccentric and solitary strong experts. It's not strange for them to run to this desert border to sell maps. Yao Lao said casually. Xiaoyan was speechless. A moment later, he said with a bitter smile in his heart, why did I have to run into him? Of all people. Just consider it your good luck. Yao Lao said with a somewhat delighted laugh. Little fellow, don't try to scheme for the map. I don't lack money. Take your item and leave. Also, don't harbor any thoughts of seizing it that won't benefit you at all. The old man waved his hand and said calmly. He seemed unafraid of Xiaoyan running away with the fragmented piece in his hand. Slowly letting out a breath, Xiaoyan helplessly shook his head and said, indeed, in front of someone who was perhaps once a Do King level strong expert, it's hard for me to forcibly seize it. Snap. The pen in his hand, which was slowly moving, suddenly snapped with a clear sound, breaking into two. The old man's eyes stared intently at the map that now had a large black mark on it. After a long while, he looked up at Xiaoyan. A faint cold intent slowly emanated from his murky eyes. Who exactly are you? The old man's hand gently waved over the counter. The main door, which was wide open, closed with a bang. The old man looked at Xiaoyan with sharp eyes. A powerful, icy aura diffused from the old man's body. Just as the icy aura oppressed Xiaoyan, Yao Lao's spiritual power enveloped Xiaoyan's entire body, making him immune to the opponent's oppressive aura. Old sir, please don't misunderstand. I don't know you. It's just that I am naturally born with a somewhat peculiar sense of perception, especially sensitive to some nearby energies. Just now, I happened to detect an energy fluctuation in your body, old sir, so. Seeing the old man's intense reaction, Xiaoyan spread his hands, retreated 2 steps, and said with a smile, Old sir, I don't have any other intentions. I just genuinely want to obtain this piece of fragmented map. It is very important to me. I hope you can be understanding. Of course. You can tell me what you want to exchange for it. As long as I can provide it, I will definitely not refuse. Little fellow, I didn't think you had some skill. Seeing that his aura had not harmed Xiaoyan in the slightest, the white-haired old man couldn't help but say in surprise. Ha ha. Smiling. Xiaoyan certainly wouldn't be foolish enough to reveal Yao Lao. He had to slightly nod and smiled as he held up the fragmented map piece in his hand, saying, Old sir, what do you think? I told you, I won't sell it to anyone. If you really want to forcibly take it, then don't blame me, the old man, for bullying the young. He said indifferently. Behind the old man, his white hair stood up without wind, and icy do qi swirled around his body. Being directly refused by the old man, Xiaoyan frowned. He hadn't thought this old fellow would be so stubborn. Looking at his appearance, he clearly didn't even know that the fragmented map, if complete, could be used to search for the purifying demonic lotus flame. Yet, he still refused to sell it. Which truly made Xiaoyan feel a bit angry. Old sir, I must have this item today. Even if you don't agree, this little fellow, will have to forcibly take it. The smile on his face gradually faded, and Xiaoyan said helplessly, "By yourself." "Even though I, the old man, have been reclusive for several decades due to certain reasons, it's not your place, a mere tier 2 alchemist, to talk to me like that." Hearing Xiaoyan's words, a hint of mockery flashed across the old man's wrinkled face, and he said with a cold laugh. Pouting, Xiaoyan didn't want to waste words with the old man. His toes tapped the ground. His figure quickly retreated towards the door, seeking death. Seeing Xiaoyan's movement, murderous intent appeared on the old man's face. The fierce scar became even more prominent. His foot stomped on the ground, and his figure shot toward Xiaoyan like lightning. Just as the old man rushed forward, icy cold air quickly filled the shop. A faint mist also swirled around, completely obscuring Xiaoyan's vision. With his vision obscured by the surrounding icy mist, Xiaoyan's expression slightly changed. He knew that this time things might truly be troublesome. Under the white, icy mist covering the entire room, a feeling of unease flashed in Xiaoyan's heart. This was because he realized that this layer of mist had caused him to lose his sense of direction. Furthermore, after this dense mist permeated his body, Xiaoyan clearly felt that his speed had slowed down significantly. Being restricted in speed before even officially clashing, Xiaoyan felt extremely solemn. His mind moved, and a surge of purple aura from his lower abdomen immediately split into waves of purple flame dou qi. The purple flame dou qi quickly circulated through the meridians. In just a blink of an eye, Xiaoyan's body suddenly felt much lighter. A faint purple dou qi aura radiated outwards, enveloping his body. The diffused dou qi caused bursts of purple flame to rise, burning the invading icy mist into nothingness. With the dou qi diffused, Xiaoyan clearly felt that his state had significantly improved. His hand quickly grabbed the black heavy ruler on his back and forcefully pulled it out. With a soft clang, the heavy ruler plunged hard into the ground, creating a deep imprint. Gripping the heavy ruler tightly in his hand, Xiaoyan carefully observed the cold mist around him. Source of the story, Thien Full. After Xiaoyan released the purple flame dou qi to protect his body, a low surprise sound came from within the silver-colored mist surrounding him. Clearly, the mysterious old man hadn't expected Xiaoyan to be able to summon both dou qi armor and a flame. "Old sir, I bear no ill will, nor do I wish to disturb your many years of secluded life. It's just that this piece of fragmented map is extremely important to me. I hope you can be understanding." His eyes swept around, and Xiaoyan shouted loudly. I spent an unknown amount of effort to acquire this back then. Although I have studied it for several decades without being able to uncover its benefits, I at least know that it hides absolutely no small secret. You want me to give it to you for no reason? Dream on. Surrounded by the cold mist, the old man said with a cold laugh. Frowning, Xiaoyan was about to speak again. His heart suddenly trembled slightly. The heavy ruler in his hand quickly rose to block in front of him, and then his body quickly retreated behind it. Phew! Following the sound of tearing air, several rays of white ice spikes violently burst out from within the mist, then struck the black heavy ruler in front of Xiaoyan with a clanging sound. The ice spikes melted after hitting the black heavy ruler, turning into cold water that pooled on the ruler's body. At this moment, Xiaoyan, gripping the heavy ruler, felt a cold sensation transmit back, continuously entering his body. His expression slightly changed. Xiaoyan's finger gently flicked, and a fierce purple flame emerged from his palm. Then quickly shot onto the ruler's body, completely burning away the icy cold frost. Purple flame. I didn't think you, at such a young age, would possess so many strange objects. No wonder you are so bold. Looking at Xiaoyan's action, the old man, hidden in the mist, once again said in surprise. Xiaoyan narrowed his eyes, and did not reply. His gaze stared intently at the mist, his steps slowly advancing and retreating rhythmically according to the route in his memory. Although this damn thing has severely reduced my strength from the past, dealing with a brat like you is still no problem. Seeing Xiaoyan's movement in the white mist, the old man laughed coldly. A white phantom suddenly shot out, like lightning, and instantly approached Xiaoyan. The old man's sudden rush caused Xiaoyan to be slightly startled. He tightly gripped the heavy ruler in his hand, and fiercely swung it toward the figure in front of him without any reservation. Looking at the giant ruler that tore through the air and rushed toward him, the old man's withered hands quickly formed a seal, and his mouth softly shouted, "Ice condensation force." Immediately after the old man's hand seal was completed, the white mist suddenly solidified and condensed. In an instant, a translucent ice force block, about half a meter wide, abruptly solidified. Thump! The heavy ruler fiercely struck down, finally heavily hitting the surface of the ice force block. Instantly, Xiaoyan's expression abruptly changed. He discovered that when his heavy ruler struck the ice block, a powerful force bounced back, which was mysteriously directed straight back, catching Xiaoyan off guard and sending him flying. Looking at the slightly pale-faced Xiaoyan being sent flying, the old man once again laughed coldly. He waved his hand, and dozens of sharp ice spikes instantly appeared. Then, following the old man's wave, they shot toward Xiaoyan. Already sent flying backward, his feet dragged across the ground for a distance to slow down. Xiaoyan looked up and frowned at the icy aura of the countless ice spikes rushing toward him. His foot suddenly stomped hard on the ground. Following an explosion of energy, his body violently shot up into the air. Shooting into the air, avoiding the incoming ice spike attack. Xiaoyan's body suddenly spun rapidly. The black heavy ruler in his hand, borrowing the force of the spin, abruptly left his hand, and fiercely shot toward the old man. The heavy ruler shot out. Under the added force of gravity, it seemed to tear through the air, vaguely revealing a faint purple rainbow-like aura. Looking at the furiously rushing black heavy ruler, the old man frowned in surprise. The young man in front of him had caused him too many surprises. However, despite his surprise, the old man did not hold back. His two palms opened and closed, condensing into countless small ice threads. With a wave of his hand, the ice threads shot up, then formed a cluster and wrapped around the heavy ruler. In just a blink of an eye, a thick layer of white ice threads completely encircled the heavy ruler. Under the cluster formed by the countless ice threads surrounding it, the fierce force carried by the heavy ruler was rapidly neutralized. It completely stopped when it was only half a meter above the old man's head. Casually glancing at the heavy ruler tightly bound by the ice threads and suspended above his head, the old man laughed coldly. He waved his hand. The heavy ruler, tightly bound by the ice threads, spun once in midair, and then suddenly turned, furiously striking back toward Xiaoyan. The force carried by the heavy ruler under the old man's control was no less than when Xiaoyan threw it with full force. If he were hit, Xiaoyan would hardly avoid serious injury. Looking at the heavy ruler rapidly approaching, Xiaoyan helplessly shook his head. His back slightly trembled, and the purple cloud wings shot out. His two wings flapped, and his figure quickly flew up high, finally avoiding the incoming heavy ruler. Dochi transformation wings. Looking at the two wings shooting out from Xiaoyan's back, the old man's pupils slightly contracted, and he said in surprise. A moment later, he shook his head and frowned. It doesn't look like Dochi transformation wings. Could it be a flying Do skill? Well done. How can this little fellow have strange treasures all over his body? Slowly shaking his head, the old man said in astonishment. Ignoring the shock the purple cloud wings caused the old man, Xiaoyan took advantage of the old man's distraction. His figure suddenly descended, and the purple flame immediately appeared. He gently flicked his hand, and a stream of purple flame burst out, finally burning away the cluster of ice threads surrounding the heavy ruler. Having lost the control of the ice threads, the black heavy ruler fell. Xiaoyan's two wings flapped, and his figure quickly descended. On his palm, tiny streams of purple flame shot out from his 10 fingers, completely burning away the ice threads surrounding the black heavy ruler. After completely neutralizing the ice threads, Xiaoyan finally dared to once again grab the black heavy ruler. In his hand, holding the heavy ruler, his two wings quickly flapped again, and Xiaoyan's body immediately shot up high once more. Standing below, the old man saw Xiaoyan preparing to directly break through the roof and fly out, and a hint of mockery flashed across his face. Xiaoyan's figure rapidly flew upwards. However, just after the purple cloud wings flapped twice, he suddenly sensed a cold aura continuously emanating from not far above his head. Sensing this cold aura, Xiaoyan's heart slightly trembled. The heavy ruler in his hand suddenly shot upwards. Clang! The heavy ruler struck something with a clear sound. At the same time, several small pieces of ice lightly fell onto Xiaoyan's face. The chilling sensation made his heart sink slightly. He hadn't thought that old fellow could turn the entire room into a hard ice cellar in such a short time. Giving up on the idea of using brute force to break through the roof, Xiaoyan's two wings slowly flapped. His figure slightly descended. He coldly looked at the old man standing in the white mist. TSK, a rare flying Do skill, a strange purple flame. An unusual movement Do skill. Strength far surpassing an ordinary Do master. Little fellow, are you a direct disciple of the Cloud Mist sect master? Or the young master of one of those major clans? Or perhaps someone from the imperial family? Raising his head, the old man looked at Xiaoyan flapping the purple cloud wings in midair with some interest and asked. Xiaoyan licked his mouth, carefully staring at the old man, still not answering. But even if you have the identity I mentioned, you still can't take this fragmented map away today. His hand gently stroked his aged face, full of scars. The old man's voice gradually turned cold. Although you possess many unique skills, you are still just a mere Do master. Although my current strength is greatly reduced, dealing with you is not a difficult task. The old man said indifferently, hand over the item. I will let you leave. I won't hold it against you for disrupting my many years of reclusive life. Looking at this stubborn old man, Xiaoyan helplessly sighed, and said with a bitter laugh in his heart. Master, it seems I can only rely on you to take action. I am not his match. Even though his current strength is no longer what it once was, as he said, dealing with me is not difficult. Haha, indeed not difficult. After all, you two are on two different tiers. Furthermore, that fellow possesses Do skills that are no weaker than yours. Our clash earlier was merely a test. If he truly takes action, you won't last more than 5 moves. Yao Lao's voice rang out in Xiaoyan's heart. Xiaoyan smiled bitterly and nodded. Having briefly clashed with the old man, he naturally knew how formidable the old man's strength was. If he hadn't had the Do Chi transformation wings now, he would probably have been caught long ago. Then leave it to me. I'll temporarily take control of your body. At this point, Yao Lao no longer refused. He knew that even if he wanted to use real combat to temper Xiaoyan, there was a limit. For Xiaoyan, whose strength had just reached Do master, to challenge a strong expert who was once a Do king, was undoubtedly just courting death. Old sir, I said, I must have this fragmented map. First slightly nodding, Xiaoyan looked down at the old man and shrugged, then suddenly slowly closed his eyes. Looking at Xiaoyan's peculiar movement, the old man's eyebrows slightly furrowed in surprise. A moment later, his expression abruptly changed. He discovered that a fierce aura, no weaker than his own, suddenly slowly diffused from within the young man's body in midair. How is this possible? Sensing the continuously diffusing aura, the old man's originally calm face finally revealed a hint of shock. Chapter 178. Everything was enveloped in layers of icy cold mist, as if one had walked into a space of frigid air. White fog permeated the surroundings, making it impossible to see anything. Inside the white fog, the old man raised his head, his face full of shock as he looked at the young man standing midair. After a moment, his expression gradually became serious, and he lightly shouted, "Young man, what kind of secret technique is this?" It was no wonder the old man was so shaken. Although there were quite a few secret techniques on the Dochi continent that could boost strength so rapidly, these techniques were all of the highest caliber. Those individuals or groups capable of possessing such high-level secret techniques could be counted on one's fingers, either superforces or reclusive superpowerhouses. Compared to these superforces and superpowerhouses, the powerhouses within the Jiama Empire were undoubtedly like the light of a firefly compared to the bright moon. Could this young man be from one of those forces? The old man felt a surge of panic in his heart. Under the pressure of those terrifying superforces, he couldn't maintain his composure. Impossible. Although this young man carries various wondrous treasures, the cultivation method he practices doesn't seem to exceed the profound tier, Xianxia. This absolutely does not match the style of those forces. Although a brief panic flashed in his heart, after a moment, the old man immediately suppressed the emotion and comforted himself. Slowly calming down, the old man's expression was grave. His withered hands clenched tightly. The icy cold mist around him rapidly condensed, finally forming a white ice spear between his palms. After condensing Do Chi into an ice spear, the old man still felt a sense of danger. His hands quickly formed a seal, and then he shouted softly, "Ice Spirit Armor." Following the shout, the white mist filling the surroundings instantly condensed onto the old man's body, then formed a magnificent, icy ice armor. The weapon in his hand and the ice armor on his body were entirely condensed from Do Chi. At the very least, a Dao Lin powerhouse could barely manage this. On the Do Chi continent, from an ordinary person to the great Do Master level, one could use externalized Do Chi to cover their weapon, thereby greatly increasing the attack power. After reaching Do Ling, one could, like the white-haired old man, condense Do Chi into weapons and armor. This type of weapon and defense was incomparable to ordinary weapons and armor. The old man was seriously putting forth his full effort to deal with the situation, clearly showing how highly he regarded Xiao Yan after his sudden increase in strength. Ignoring the old man below who was preparing with all his might, the momentum emanating from Xiao Yan's body mid-air grew increasingly stronger. He suddenly threw his head back and let out a long howl. The howl, containing fierce Do Chi, instantly dispersed nearly half of the dense white mist below. Seeing Xiao Yan's single howl dissipate the thick mist, the old man's face changed again. Not daring to delay further, he swung the ice spear in his hand. Countless sharp ice thorns rapidly condensed above his head, then shot toward Xiao Yan midair with a sound of tearing wind. Midair, as the whistling sound gradually ceased, Xiao Yan's wings suddenly vibrated. His body descended like a diving eagle. He looked indifferently at the flying ice thorns. His hands formed a cross-shaped seal, and then lightly clapped together. The story you are reading is copied from Tree in full. Following the sound of his palms meeting, an invisible energy ripple rapidly diffused out like lightning. A crack sound followed, and immediately after, countless sharp ice thorns mid-air turned into a cloud of cold powder, fluttering down. This is soul power. Looking at the sharp ice thorns suddenly shattered into powder mid-air, the white-haired old man was momentarily stunned and cried out in surprise. Ignoring the astonished old man, Xiao Yan's wings flapped. He instantly appeared above the old man's head, gripping the heavy Xian ruler and swinging it down with full force. The momentum of the heavy Xian ruler this time almost tore the very air. A faint black trace was left where the heavy ruler passed. Although this strike didn't have the same dramatic presence as the previous one, the old man's expression became extremely solemn when the heavy ruler was swung out. He understood in his heart that even though this attack was silent, the power contained within it was fundamentally incomparable to Xiaoyan's previous attacks. Carefully stepping back, the old man suddenly clenched his hand. The ice spear, carrying a bone-chilling force, aggressively stabbed forward. Seeing the old man choose to meet force with force, a trace of mockery flashed in Xiaoyan's eyes. The heavy ruler suddenly accelerated, finally colliding with the incoming ice spear. The heavy ruler and the ice spear met. Instantly, a fierce energy surge diffused from the point of impact, shaking the earthen floor of the room into many spider-web-like holes. Break! Immediately upon impact, the ice spear was compressed and bent like a bow. Following Xiaoyan's cold shout, it cracked with a rattle, and then shattered violently, sending ice fragments flying everywhere. In just one exchange, his weapon was easily shattered by the opponent. The old man's face became somewhat grim. He hadn't expected the young man before him to have such an unimaginably profound change in strength in just a short few minutes. If Xiaoyan was merely a Dou master powerhouse before, now he had perhaps reached at least the Dou Wang Dao Vong Dou King level. This difference was somewhat alarming and truly caused the old man to feel a sense of dread. What exactly is this young man? A thought flashed through his mind. The old man lightly pressed his toe against the ground, his figure rapidly retreating. Simultaneously, his hands quickly moved. Following his hand movements, 7 blocks of ice force, Bang Qin, flashed with a cold light and quickly condensed to block Xiaoyan's pursuit path. No sooner had he arranged the 7 ice force barriers than the old man heard a clear sound. As he looked up, he was astonished to find Xiaoyan holding the heavy ruler and carving a straight path toward him. Along his path, the ice force barriers, before even touching his body, were burned into nothingness by the violet flame surrounding him. Good young man. I don't believe that after more than 20 years of reclusion, I can be beaten by a little brat like you without the strength to retaliate. Xiaoyan's continuous pressure ignited a surge of fury in the old man's heart. His eyebrows instantly stood erect. He suddenly stomped his foot on the ground. The icy cold Dou Qi within a dozen meters of the ground instantly froze. Profound ice sweeping kill. Forming a hand seal in front of him, the old man's throat suddenly let out a low growl. Instantly, crescent-shaped ice blades shot out, spinning around him. The ice blades grew increasingly numerous. Finally, they completely concealed the old man, forming a swirling wind vortex made up of countless small ice blades. Go! A soft shout emerged from the wind vortex. The ice blade vortex suddenly surged toward Xiaoyan. Along its path, the earthen floor of the room was carved into a trench, and the glass counter was blasted to smithereens by the wind of the ice blades. Coldly looking at the old man's aggressive attack, Xiaoyan suddenly halted his steps. The violet flame covering his entire body was abruptly retracted back into his body. Now, Xiaoyan had no external defense whatsoever, and the heavy Xian ruler in his hand was also plunged into the ground beside him. Young man, you seek death. Seeing Xiaoyan's movement, a somewhat furious roar emerged from the ice blade vortex. Evidently, this seemingly dismissive action by Xiaoyan had infuriated the old man. For him, attacking a junior was already inappropriate. Now he had to use his full strength, yet the opponent chose not to defend and walked casually toward his strongest attack. This undoubtedly dealt a blow to his pride as a powerhouse. Still ignoring the furious old man, Xiaoyan sensed the oppressive force coming from the front. He lightly exhaled. His palm slowly opened and then trembled slightly, a bone-chilling white flame suddenly flared up fiercely. After the bone-chilling white flame appeared, Xiaoyan stomped hard on the ground. Following a loud explosion, his body shot out like an arrow leaving the bow, transforming into a streak of light that charged straight toward the small ice blade vortex that was sweeping everything in its path. If you seek death yourself, don't blame this old man. Looking at Xiaoyan directly meeting the attack, the old man immediately shouted coldly from within the vortex. Although his current strength was not what it once was, few dared to directly meet his profound ice sweeping kill, a high-level profound tier technique. To the old man, Xiaoyan's action was undoubtedly courting death. Still ignoring the roaring old man, Xiaoyan continued to charge straight toward the wind vortex. His eyes slightly narrowed. His palm, almost completely covered in the bone-chilling white flame, plunged straight into the wind vortex. As his palm plunged into the wind vortex, a sudden energy fluctuation diffused inside the room, pushing the ground up by nearly half a foot. Crack! Xiaoyan's palm stopped for a brief moment inside the wind vortex. The spinning ice blade vortex suddenly began to slow down gradually. To the sound of cracking, the ice blade vortex completely stopped, freezing into a single, snow-white giant ice pillar. Indifferently looking at the ice pillar before him, Xiaoyan slowly withdrew his hand. His fingers, which were inside the ice pillar, lightly pulled out. Thud! A muffled sound rang out. The ice pillar violently exploded, turning into countless cold, white powder fragments that fell from midair. As the ice pillar exploded, the old man, frozen within a thin layer of light ice, was revealed inside. Looking at the old man, Xiaoyan's eyes slightly closed, then opened again after a moment. The cold, vicissitudinous black aura in his eyes had completely disappeared, replaced by the vibrant spirit that a young man should possess. Old sir, you have lost. I apologize, but this item belongs to me. Clapping his hands, Xiaoyan smiled at the old man. Looking at the old man before him, who was enveloped in a layer of eerie, white, icy light, Xiaoyan lightly sighed in relief. He offered a slightly apologetic hand to the old man, then turned to leave. Young man, I truly underestimated you. Just as Xiaoyan turned, the old man's slightly tired voice came from within the ice layer. His steps slightly paused, and Xiaoyan turned back. The old man inside the ice layer slowly opened his eyes. Xiaoyan remained calm because he knew that with the old man's current strength, he couldn't break through the shield Yao Lao had set up. Sighing, Xiaoyan said with a wry smile, Old sir, I said I didn't want to fall out with you, but this item is truly important to me, so. Ha, I didn't expect that. After more than 20 years of reclusion here, I would be put in such a difficult position by a young junior. It's truly a bit disheartening. The old man's voice was tinged with melancholy. After a moment, his voice suddenly changed. His eyes pierced through the eerie ice layer, looking at Xiaoyan outside, and he asked indifferently. Young man, is this incomplete map fragment very important to you? Xiaoyan was silent for a moment, then slightly nodded. He. Seeing this, the old man suddenly laughed eerily. The smile was somewhat strange. Frowning, Xiaoyan ignored him and turned to walk out the door. That year, I painstakingly managed to seize this incomplete map fragment in the middle of the desert. I then used my many years of map drawing experience to perfectly divide it into two parts. One part is the one you took earlier, and the remaining part. He. The old man said with a cold laugh. His steps halted once more. Xiaoyan turned his back to the old man. His finger flicked out from his storage ring, and the incomplete map fragment quickly appeared in his palm. Xiaoyan held it up and examined it closely. He indeed found that the size of this fragment was exactly half the size of the one he had seized in the cave in the magical beast mountain range previously. Clenching the fragment in his hand, Xiaoyan's expression became somewhat grim. To have gone through all that effort just to get half of the incomplete map fragment truly made him somewhat angry. Lightly exhaling, Xiaoyan carefully put the fragment into his storage ring. Then slowly turned back to look at the old man coldly. You originally didn't need to reveal this secret. Moreover, you know I wouldn't kill you, but you chose to say it yourself. Do you want me to kill you? Hee hee. Young man, don't threaten me with death. I have lived more than half a lifetime. What turmoil have I not experienced? When I was dominating the Jiama Empire. You hadn't even been born. Do you think I'm afraid of your threat? Besides, if I die, even if you have heaven-defying skills, you won't be able to obtain the remaining part of the incomplete map. Hee hee. At that time, with just one small missing section, even if you patch up the entire map, you won't be able to find the location of the treasure. The old man replied with contempt to Xiaoyan's cold voice, which contained a hint of killing intent. Narrowing his eyes, a faint cold light flashed through them. Xiaoyan lightly exhaled. He clenched his hand and said calmly. Speak. What exactly do you want? Your sudden revelation of this secret isn't just a foolish attempt to anger me, is it? This young man's mind is indeed extraordinary. I am truly curious about what kind of monster could cultivate you. Although I cannot say anything now, I can affirm that in 10 years, you will likely stand at the peak of this Jiama Empire. Looking at Xiaoyan's calm demeanor, the old man couldn't help but say with a sigh of admiration. Hearing the old man's assessment, Xiaoyan glanced at him, frowning. Those are just your words. How exactly will you be willing to hand over the remaining part of the incomplete map? Can you release me from this ice layer? Of course, if you're not afraid of me turning against you. The old man smiled. Xiaoyan narrowed his eyes, contemplating, staring intently at the old man. After a moment, his eyes slowly closed, then suddenly opened. He slowly approached, his hand lightly touching the ice layer. His palm trembled slightly, and a wisp of bone-chilling white flame seeped in, rapidly dissolving the eerie ice layer. If I can imprison you once, I can do it a second time, so don't try any tricks. Otherwise, next time, the ice layer that condenses will be from your own blood. With the mere wave of his hand to break the eerie ice layer, a Douling powerhouse would not have that ability. Xiaoyan's dark eyes suddenly became profoundly deep, carrying a sense of ancient vicissitude once again. After breaking the ice layer, Xiaoyan slightly turned his head back. The profoundly deep, ancient vicissitude in his eyes quickly vanished. He slowly lowered his head to look at the rapidly thawing ice, then spoke to the old man. Speak. What a terrifyingly cold flame. If I am not mistaken, the flame you used earlier is a kind of miraculous heavenly flame, isn't it? His face trembling, the old man spoke with a hint of fear. Xiaoyan raised his eyes, non-committal. The story you are reading is sourced from website name. Looking at Xiaoyan's demeanor, a trace of joy flashed in the old man's eyes, but he immediately suppressed it, pondering. You also know that my true strength is that of a Dou Huang, a Dao Hong, Dou Emperor powerhouse. Xiaoyan nodded. Then do you know my identity? The old man asked again. No. Seeing Xiaoyan shake his head, the old man shook his head with some helplessness. However, a hint of pride then flashed across his face. My name is Hai Bo Dong. Perhaps you haven't heard this name, but I think you must have heard my other name. Ice Emperor, Bang Hong. The two words Ice Emperor registered in his ears. Xiaoyan was first stunned, and then his expression changed. He looked at the old man who had just lost to him with a strange gaze. Although he had been hiding in Wutan City before, he was not unfamiliar with this powerhouse who had shaken the Jiama Empire. The Ice Emperor, once ranked among the top 10 powerhouses of the Jiama Empire, was a solitary and arrogant individual, extremely skilled in ice attribute Dou Qi. He once angrily froze an entire city. Among the top 10 powerhouses of that year, he was one of the few Dou Huang powerhouses who had fought the sect master of the Cloud Mist sect, Van Lam Tong, atop the cloud mist mountain. Although he was ultimately defeated, the opponent won by a narrow margin. In a powerhouse convention jointly organized by the Jiama Empire and the Chuyan Empire, he single-handedly fought against an opposing Do Huang and a Do Wang without defeat, shocking the entire arena. After that powerhouse convention, the Ice Emperor disappeared. Up until now, the name Ice Emperor in the Jiama Empire only remained in the memories of powerhouses of his generation. The new top 10 powerhouses now overshadowed the glory of the previous generation of 10 masters. Xiaoyan had never imagined that the seemingly insignificant old man before him was the Ice Emperor who had once given the powerhouse factions of the Chuyan Empire a headache. This kind of surprise truly made one gasp in astonishment. "Heh, that's good. My name hasn't faded into oblivion with time. You've still heard of it." Looking at Xiaoyan's astonished expression, Haibo Dong smiled with a hint of triumph. Slowly breathing out, Xiaoyan sighed. "Indeed, it is unexpected. I never thought that the Do Huang powerhouse who shook the Jiama Empire would be reclusive in the desert, working as a small map merchant. Then how did you end up like this? The strength you just showed seemed to be only at the Douling level." Xiaoyan asked in confusion. Hearing this, Haibo Dong nodded with some bitterness and sighed. "That year, after participating in the Empire's powerhouse convention, I came to the Tager Desert. By chance I seized the incomplete map fragment, but because of it, I was pursued by the Queen Medusa, my Dutoa Nu Vong, the royal figure of the snake people in the desert. You must know that Queen Medusa's strength is top tier among Do Huang powerhouses. If it weren't for this powerhouse's constraints, the snake people would have attacked the human empire long ago. In that battle, it was no surprise that I lost to her, although I managed to escape. Later, I was hit by her snake seal Jinx, Xa Chi Fong and Chu. Not only did my body rapidly age, but my strength was also sealed at the Douling level." Haibo Dong sighed. "For so many years, I've been living here in reclusion, studying the secret of the incomplete map, hoping to find a way to break the seal from it. But this map fragment is only a small part. No matter how experienced I am, I cannot solve it." "You're not suggesting that you want me to help you break the seal, are you?" Narrowing his eyes, Xiaoyan suddenly frowned. Ah. You think too highly of me. I don't have that capability." Shaking his head slightly, Xiaoyan gave a forced laugh. He couldn't handle such a heavy responsibility. "Decades ago, I obtained a formula that can break the seal. As long as the medicinal pill is refined according to the formula's instructions, my strength can be restored," Haibo Dong said in a deep voice. "I think you should go find Pill King Gu He. In this Jiama Empire, there shouldn't be many who can compare to him in terms of pill refining. I am just a mere second-tier alchemist." Xiaoyan shrugged and said helplessly. "He won't do." Haibo Dong shook his head and said with a wry smile, "The most crucial condition for refining this medicinal pill is that the alchemist must possess a heavenly flame, Hua. Pill King Gu He doesn't seem to have this item." "Oh?" Hearing this, a fleeting hint of surprise flashed in Xiaoyan's heart. What kind of medicinal pill requires such stringent conditions? "I originally didn't intend to tell you the information about the remaining part of the incomplete map, but the bone-chilling white flame you displayed at the very end made me change my mind. As long as you can refine the medicinal pill I need, I will not only hand over this small incomplete map fragment to you, but at the same time, I as Emperor Haibo Dong, will also owe you a favor. You should know how valuable a favor from a Do Huang powerhouse is," Haibo Dong said in a deep voice. Hearing this, Xiaoyan's heart slightly stirred. He asked softly, "What tier is the medicinal pill you need?" "A 6th-tier medicinal pill." Haibo Dong licked his lips and smiled. Rolling his eyes, Xiaoyan helplessly spread his hands and shrugged. 6th tier. Even if I have a heavenly flame, I am currently only a 2nd-tier alchemist. How can I possibly refine a pill of that tier? I believe your actual strength is not just what you are showing. Looking at the helpless Xiaoyan, Hai Bodong smiled with a hint of cunningness. Sighing, Xiaoyan paused slightly, asking softly in his heart, Master, what do you think? No matter what, we must obtain the incomplete map fragment related to the pure lotus demonic flame, Tin Li Nu Hoa. It is the most crucial step for the future evolution of your cultivation method. Yao Lao said thoughtfully. So your intention is to agree to him? Agree to him first. Moreover, a favor from a Do Huang powerhouse is indeed worthwhile. But do you think this? Old man, once his strength is restored. Xiaoyan rolled his eyes, asking cautiously. Relax. With me here, even if his strength is restored, he won't be able to seize the incomplete map. Furthermore, when refining the pill, can't we implement some measures to guard against the unexpected? Yao Lao said with a faint smile. Hearing this, Xiaoyan finally let out a sigh of relief. He looked up at Hai Bodong's expectant face, nodded slightly and smiled. Good, I agree to your terms. Seeing Xiaoyan nod, Hai Bodong finally breathed a sigh of relief. The smile on his old face also relaxed a few parts because of this. Give me the recipe. Oh right, you must also know the rules when asking an alchemist to refine medicinal pills, right? Xiaoyan gently smiled toward Hai Bodong. The ingredients are to be provided by you. Hai Bodong nodded with a bitter smile. He naturally knew this rule. However, his withered hand held a few strands of beard. Where did the beard come from? And he said with some embarrassment, I have managed to obtain the majority of the ingredients required for the recipe, but I am still missing one type. This medicinal ingredient is called the sand mandala flower. It can only be found within the Tagar Desert. The higher the temperature of the area, the easier it is to find it. But you also know that I cultivate an isotribute technique. Furthermore, the Medusa Queen has placed a seal on my body. As long as I take one step deeper into the Tagar Desert, I will be discovered by her. Therefore, seeing Hai Bodong's embarrassed expression, Xiaoyan rolled his eyes, pouted and said, You don't want me to find it for you, do you? I'm already taking a loss. Just refining the pill for you. And you still want me to find the medicinal ingredient for you in the vast desert. Isn't your small piece of fragmented map a bit overpriced? Hearing this, Hai Bodong laughed awkwardly. After hesitating for a long time, he said with some helplessness, All right, I can give you a piece of information that you might be interested in. What kind of information? Xiaoyan asked in surprise. It's related to a heavenly flame. Hai Bodong spread his hands and said with a smile, I wonder if this piece of information can persuade you to make a move and help me find the sand mandala flower. The two words heavenly flame entered his ears, and Xiaoyan's heart clearly thumped fiercely. His throat slightly bobbed, and his gaze looked at Hai Bodong in front of him with some fervor. You've probably also heard that there is a heavenly flame hidden in Tagar, right? Looking at Xiaoyan's expression, Hai Bodong sighed slightly in his heart and said with a long laugh. Slightly nodding, Xiaoyan hurriedly said, Do you know where the heavenly flame is in the Tagar Desert? I am also very interested in map drawing. I once went around the Tagar Desert, and was lucky enough to obtain some information related to the heavenly flame. I have investigated the routes and locations mentioned in this information a bit. Although I still cannot definitively say where the heavenly flame ultimately is, I roughly know which areas have a relatively high probability of the heavenly flame appearing. Hai Bodong said with a smug chuckle. If I don't give you directions, even if you search the Tagar Desert for a year, it will be difficult to find the heavenly flame. How about it? As long as you agree to help me find the sand mandala flower, I will tell you all the information I've researched about the heavenly flame over the years. Hai Budong said with a smile. Agreed. Without any hesitation. Xiaoyan immediately agreed. The lure of the heavenly flame to him now was truly too great. To find it, Xiaoyan could pay a huge price. Seeing Xiaoyan agree, Hai Budong nodded with a smile. His hand gently reached into his chest. Finally, he took out a thin piece of parchment paper and handed it to Xiaoyan. He smiled and said, according to my investigation, there are 3 most likely locations in the Tager Desert where the heavenly flame exists. Receiving the parchment paper, Xiaoyan carefully unfolded it. He found that it was an extremely detailed map of the terrain of the Tager Desert. The map sold outside could not compare to this map at all. It not only accurately marked the locations of water in the desert, but also carefully marked the scattered snake people. Tribes in the desert. Do you see the 3 flame symbols on the map? Hai Budong reminded him with a smile. Hearing this, Xiaoyan's gaze swept across the map, and he indeed found 3 easily visible flame symbols in 3 directions on the map. The 3 locations, situated in the heart of the Tager Desert, are where the heavenly flame has the highest chance of appearing. Pointing to the 3 flame symbols, Hai Budong smiled and said, of course, these are only locations that I have deduced from my investigation, and it is impossible for them to be 100% accurate. However, compared to you searching randomly, they are undoubtedly much better. Xiaoyan slightly nodded. Although he had Yao Lao's assistance, the Tager Desert was so vast. It was indeed extremely difficult to find the location of the heavenly flame from it. The map provided by Hai Budong undoubtedly offered him an opportunity to save a lot of time and energy. You must remember, it is best to go to the locations with the flame symbols in the east and north. The area in the west. I would say it's best not to go. His finger stopped at the western flame symbol, and Hai Budong reminded him in a deep voice. Why? Because that area is deep within the Tager Desert. The Medusa Queen can sense the aura of anyone who enters that area. Although you possess many rare treasures, if you go up against that terrifying Medusa Queen, I don't feel you have much chance of escaping alive. Hai Budong sighed, still feeling lingering fear. You are reading the story taken from the .com. I'll try my best. Slightly nodding, Xiaoyan also knew in his heart that if he couldn't find any trace of the heavenly flame in those 2 locations, then he would likely search the area with the western flame symbol. Even if that place was unpredictable and dangerous, he had to try to go there, because the lure of the heavenly flame was too great for him. That is the only thing I can assist you with. I hope you can successfully find the heavenly flame, and then bring the sand mandala flower back. Watching Xiaoyan carefully put away the map, Hai Budong smiled and said, as for the recipe and the small piece of fragmented map, allow me to keep them for a little longer. After you return, I will hand everything over to you. Slightly nodding, Xiaoyan cupped his hands toward Hai Budong and said, in that case, I will take my leave now. I truly apologize for causing this mess in your place, old sir, today. His gaze swept over the mess in the middle of the room. Hai Budong smiled bitterly and shook his head, forget it. I was about to lose patience with living in seclusion here anyway. Even if you didn't smash this place, I don't think I would have kept it for much longer. Smiling, Xiaoyan once again apologized, then raised his hand toward Hai Budong, and turned to walk toward the door. Watching Xiaoyan's figure slowly disappear behind the door, Hai Budong narrowed his eyes. He remained silent for a moment, then began to clean up the mess in the room. Inside the simple shop, Xiaoyan looked up, casually watching the blazing hot sun, which felt like boiling water, shining on his face. After a long while, he gently breathed a sigh of relief. This short 2-hour experience truly made him feel like he was dreaming. Just arriving at Mo City, casually walking into a shop, and it turned out to be the secluded residence of a strong expert. This kind of thing normally only existed in books, but it had now happened right in front of him. This made him sigh with emotion. AI, unexpectedly running into a Do King's strong expert just by randomly walking in. Am I lucky or unlucky? Smiling lightly, Xiaoyan breathed a sigh of relief. He took light steps on the street, his finger gently stroking the ring. He suddenly said nonchalantly in his heart, "Master, do you think he has a problem? The fact that he is sealed is definitely true. Are you asking if the map he gave you has a problem? Haha, we're going to travel according to the map anyway. If he truly has some scheme, we'll make him suffer a little loss." Yao Lao chuckled and said with a slight ponder, "However, his map is indeed a significant help to us. I have never been to the 3 locations with the flame symbols myself, so it's not easy to conclude whether it is true or false. But even though we can't conclude whether he has malicious intent or not, we should still be somewhat wary of him. After entering the Tager Desert, carefully check the routes, and there's no need to follow the map exactly. I also wandered around this area for a period of time back then, so I also know a little. I won't let you get lost," Yao Lao said with a hint of caution. Slightly nodding, Xiaoyan smiled and said, "In that case, let's prepare all the items well, then stay in the city for the night. Tomorrow morning, we'll enter the Tager Desert." Yao Lao nodded and then fell silent. Gently patting his robe, Xiaoyan smiled. He lifted his feet and walked toward a pharmacy not far away. His harvest today had far exceeded his expectations. Not only did he unexpectedly obtain a piece of the mysterious fragmented map, but he also learned information about the heavenly flame. This couldn't help but fill Xiaoyan's heart with excitement. Walking a distance down the intersection, Xiaoyan turned into the pharmacy. He purchased some snake-repellent medicine there. While purchasing the medicine, Xiaoyan meticulously assessed the pharmacy owner. In the end, the old man was a bit scared and disgusted. And only then did Xiaoyan pretend to be embarrassed and put away the good things from the pharmacy. It seemed that after the previous incident, Xiaoyan's nerves had become a bit oversensitive. Truly thinking that every store owner he met, like Hai Budong, was a reclusive master. After preparing the snake-repellent medicine, presumably snake prevention medicine, Xiaoyan bought enough clean water at a specialized clean water store to fill his storage ring. Only then did he feel satisfied. Following the directions of a passerby, he found a high-end hotel in Mo City. As the night slowly passed, the scorching sun once again enveloped the desert in a fiery heat. Walking out of the hotel, Xiaoyan stretched his tired back and gently tapped his finger on the ring. Inside, Yao Lao had refined 50 qi recovery pills last night. These were the essential items he needed for cultivation in the desert. Standing on the road at the city gate, Xiaoyan once again checked all his items. Only then did he tightly grip the black heavy ruler on his back, took a deep breath, and began his desert journey. This time, I must find the heavenly flame. Under the respectful gaze of the gate guards, Xiaoyan walked out of the city. Looking at the sight that appeared in his vision, the endless desert, he made a firm resolve in his heart. Thank you for watching. If you found the story interesting and meaningful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel.